Hi there, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us from wherever you are, and welcome to my studio. I'm Ann Hahn-Waddell, the creative director of Bassett McNab, and I am delighted to present Origins, the first Bassett McNab introduction in nearly 2 decades. Having created fabrics for some of the industry's elite fabric houses, as well as private clients for more than 40 years, I was so excited to be able to work closely with John and Kate Greenewald of Stout to breathe new life into an already incredible library of patterns. Stout and Bassett McNab, two venerable fabric houses, each bring over a century of solid business practice and design expertise to the industry. That's certainly staying power and a testament to their timeless classic designs. I'm also so pleased to introduce my guest today, who will help me share the story of where Bassett McNab stands in the history of American design and give you their perspective on the new collection. Bill Brockschmidt and Courtney Coleman bring to their work a focus on traditional detailing, proportion, materials, and craftsmanship in both architectural elements and in furnishings. Bill and Courtney formed Brockschmidt and Coleman in February 2001 in New York City. In 2019, they opened their Southern Design Studio in a vintage double shotgun house on Magazine Street in New Orleans. Their work has been featured online and in print in Architectural Digest, Elle Decor, Garden and Gun, House Beautiful, and many, many others. Welcome, Bill and Courtney.
Thank you, Anne, and thank you to Kate and John Greenewald and to Travis and Company for inviting us to help celebrate the launch of this gorgeous fabric collection from one of our favorite fabric houses. So as you mentioned, Bill and I started our company about 20 years ago, and since then, we have considered Bassett McNab one of our secret weapons, and this is for a few reasons. One is that the patterns are typically, and we love printed fabric, so that's what I'm talking about. It's what drew us to Bassett. They are typically beautiful traditional patterns and interesting colorways printed on really pretty ground fabrics. They often have a little bit of an old-fashioned feel to them, which works well with our traditional decorating schemes. They are also a little bit off the beaten track, and that may be about to change big time. But we love that when people look at them, they're not instantly recognizable in the way that, say, Colfax and Fowler's Bow Wood or Lee Joffa's Hollyhock, which I know you had a hand in as well, are identifiable to anybody who knows anything about design. So it's really a special thing to get to use one of these beautiful fabrics that not everybody knows about. And finally, they are relatively affordable, meaning that we can buy lots of yardage and do lots of things with it. So about a year ago, when we found out that one of the leading stars of the textile industry, Anne, was about to embark on this project of breathing new life into this collection that was one of our favorites, we were really intrigued. And I think that to a lot of us, you sort of have a dream job, and I think everybody would love to hear about how you went about selecting the patterns and what the process was in developing these new fabrics.
Sure, Courtney, I'm happy to share that. So what I hoped to find was a consistent and authentic voice when I dug through the archives, you know, that design thread that would establish the foundation for the brand's renewed identity. And if I had to sum up that thread in maybe just 3 simple words, I'd choose classic for certain. I mean, that's a no-brainer. Simply chic. The patterns are sophisticated. And finally, spirited. These are not shy, retiring patterns. They have quite a bit of strength and moxie. But you can imagine selecting just the right designs wasn't really very easy. There were so many to sift through. For me, all designs, as I'm sure for you, have historic relevance in that they're the voice of who we are and how we live. But I was looking specifically for design elements that could be re-envisioned to speak to now. And that being said, you want to look at a design? Let's take a look. The first design I want to share with you is called Summer Garden. And I was really taken by how bold, almost graphic, yet graceful the flowers and leaves are in this design. The design layout is really terrific. It's one garland set on each half width, which makes it perfect for any focal point application. And the design seemed clean and crisp, both of which are elements that seem really integral to a modern design aesthetic. The archive colors, I had noted before, sometimes you have to laugh, but the archive colors were really, really bold and very 1980s, very red, green, blue based. But I wanted to give designers a different approach to color. And in this case, that meant muting the noise, muting the multicolor, and using tones in only a single color family. And you can see behind me, the very crisp and clear blue colorway. I chose to handprint this design, and boy, that warrants a few words. Because hand screening and hand printing adds a touch of handicraft. And that's important to Bassett McNab. I printed on a linen that adds a touch of relaxed formality, also one of the hallmarks of Bassett McNab. To go back to hand printing, why hand print? Well, there are two artisans that actually march these huge screens down long printing tables, stopping at each repeat to hand squeegee the ink onto the fabric, taking so much care and artistry in making sure the fabric is printed correctly, but also printing wet on dry and hand screening adds to the clarity and the amount of detail in each motif. And that makes every fabric, hand-printed fabric, so special. So Courtney and Bill, I have questions for you as well. Are we on trend? Do you see a renewed interest in classic design? And how do you see classic design being used in today's interiors?
Well, I would say that we've never kind of turned away any particular style throughout our 20 years. And we started our firm right as the 90s were ending. So the new decade, and I think also we're trained as classical architects. And so the classic designs have always been in our heart. That said, that's not true across the board. And I think there are some recent events that show there is a new appreciation for some of the classical designs. And two auctions, there was kind of frenzy of the Mario Boada auction, and before that, the Bunny Mellon auction. And I think people are just getting a little tired of the modern sleek or industrial or kind of mid-century modern, and are appreciating some of the fabrics that they grew up with. Another reaction to that was maximalism, but that kind of had rich, opulent, but sometimes that was a little bit tongue-in-cheek. I think we're finding some of our clients are really looking for beautiful interiors right now. And that might mean pretty or smart, and it's not trying to replicate the 80s or 90s, but to pay homage to them. When we saw the new collection, it reminded us of a project that we worked on recently. And it was a client who had an apartment on Park Avenue, and it was done in the late 80s with chintz sofas that kind of looked like the original colorways you held up. And it was beautiful, and it had a deep red rug that's not fashionable, but was just a really beautiful rug. And the client wanted to update. They had collected some more modern art, bold, colorful, abstract, geometric paintings, and kind of heavy charcoal drawings and some sculpture. And they said, let's just start over and do something modern. But they were so proud of the room that they had lived in and raised their child in. And we said, well, why do we have to start over? There's this beautiful carpet, and we don't have to have chintz sofas, but we could do something that kind of helps them connect to the art in a different period in their life. And I'm going to pull this whole thing up. Here's here's this beautiful colorway that's so neutral, but it still has the beautiful printing. This is Summer Garden again. And just seeing it in these neutral colors that are strong, but also delicate at the same time. And you could just imagine kind of keeping this beautiful carpet, which is what we did. And this is just like a fake version of a needlepoint sample that we had. And these are some other Bassett McNab fabrics. We look at this woven, which I just love, and then adding some strong colors, and all of a sudden, it's the character of the printing and the character of the pattern, and not the nostalgia for the 80s that you see, but a really sophisticated room that is all based on this. I wish we had this fabric when when we were doing that room not too long ago.
Well, that's so impressive, and I'm so glad that you all like Crossroads. That's the woven that you were talking about. So I want to show you another fabric in the collection following along that classic thread and what you were talking about. It's called Bird and Butterfly, and I knew this pattern would be just a must-have the minute I found it in the archive. And the story here was very much like that of Summer Garden, a beautifully drawn design with a stellar 2-across layout, but rather dated colorings like you were talking about that didn't do the pattern justice. So here's the archival piece that I found, and I just felt that there was so much beautiful, soft tonal brushwork in the motifs that was being obliterated by the darker tones. But it was the darker tones in this case that gave the design the visual impact that it needs, since it's a relatively delicate rendering. So the solution to me was to move the potent color into the background and keep the softer colors in the motifs. And marrying those two concepts makes for a strikingly modern combination. So you can see this is the really rich dark blue colorway. Again, we hand printed this design for reasons that we've already talked about. And this time we printed both on a heavier weight herringbone linen. There's actually a herringbone woven into the ground, and a lighter weight plain linen, because I saw this design as having an impact flat, as well as upholstered on walls, furnishings, and draped. So many applications, which brings up the question, you've covered it a little bit, Bill and Courtney, what's important to you in selecting fabrics for your interiors? And when does that happen in your design process? Talk to us a little bit about how you make those fabric choice decisions, if you would.
Well, actually, I think what you just said is so important to the process. So the first thing that we look at absolutely is, does the fabric have integrity? And by that, I mean, if it's a woven, it needs to have a substantial feel to it. The weaving and the pattern need to complement each other. And I don't know if y'all can see, this is a charming new pattern called Crossroads Desert. And you can imagine using it in a lot of places. If it's a print, it needs to start with a beautiful ground fabric, plain and simple. And the printing needs to be clean and crisp and distinct. And I would say that's how we start looking and thinking about what fabrics we're going to use.
And then in terms of when and how we choose the fabrics, when we get a project, it might be an existing house that has some architectural character, or the clients may have a collection of furniture or an art. And so we kind of come up with flashcards that we show the clients. And these might be some of the most recent published work of our peers, but it also might be old classics like Billy Baldwin or Francis Elkins. It might even be 18th or 19th century paintings. We kind of look at the whole range of decorative arts and decorating. And we find out what appeals to them. And it might be a tiny little aspect of one thing, or there might be one whole image that they like. And at the same time, we start to look at the furniture plan. And when we're looking at the furniture plan, we rarely rely on just pure symmetry. We prefer a balance that kind of allows for some discovery and the eye to move, and different scales of furniture, different groupings for people to sit. Not everyone likes to sit in the same type of chair, different activities in a room. And then we move on to furniture styles, and it's usually, again, a balance of comfortable upholstered furniture, kind of standout, striking antiques or modern pieces, and that allows your eye to move and for you to feel comfortable in each place in a room. And then we go to the fabrics, and that same balance applies as we're selecting the fabrics. Courtney and I, we have a big fabric library, and we'll pull a bunch of things out, and we'll kind of each pull out some things that might be the starting fabric for a room or a scheme. And that may not be the sofa, or it might be end up being just a pillow, but somehow that sets the tone for the fabric that we choose. And then we start to pull in the other fabrics that can balance or complement or contrast, or might even look kind of accidental. And sometimes even a pillow flange or a lampshade fabric makes it into the first rendition of the scheme, and it's just an important aspect. So like here's Summer Garden in this really beautiful soft colorway, and a little tiny welt in this color it kind of transforms the fabric into something else that allows it to be a sophisticated scheme. Maybe this color appears in some artwork. Maybe it's in a lamp that's across the room, and just kind of pulling together complementary or contrasting fabrics is kind of where we go. So we may be missing a few things because it's important for some spontaneity to be in the projects, and some things are just added even after the installation. But there are important things that might not just be the sofa fabric or the rug that inform a scheme from the very beginning.
Yeah, I absolutely love your process of exploration. I think maybe that's a good way to put it, not only to explore how your clients are feeling and their needs and their preferences, but then exploring products and how they fit together in a room. So when I approached the archive, it was really very much the same kind of exploration. So with the next pattern, it's called Bukhara. With this pattern, it meant exploring and maybe understanding that the original inspiration for this design came from a woven ikat. And then understanding, going back to research and understand exactly how ikats are woven. This, in fact, is what a true ikat weave looks like. And this is what the archival ikat pattern looked like. It's printed, it's a rotary print. So you can see when you compare them, there's really quite a difference in detail and elegance. So I wanted to bring the archival fabric forward by taking advantage of modern print technology and interpreting the design in a style more closely aligned with its origins. So CAD technology didn't exist in 1980. So the original pattern in the archive was hand painted, and done so rather crudely due to the limitations at the time. I mean, you can imagine an artist, and that would have been me at 20 or so, sitting in the studio with a brush with 3 bristles, trying to mimic each tiny warped strand of the ikat woven. It was almost an impossible task. So using digital printing gave us the opportunity to create a softer, more authentic, refined feel. And I can show you the difference. Here again is the archival fabric. Here is our final work. And I lost my sample, so sorry. And here again is the ikat, the woven ikat. So you can see we really did get quite a bit closer to the original idea, the original artwork, if you will. We wanted this fabric to be a workhorse, and not every fabric in a room has to be, the gobsmacking winner. There are lots of support fabrics, and we thought this pattern, Bukhara, could act as both a standalone or a complement. So we digitally printed Bukhara on a linen cotton mix with just the slightest bit of nylon for added durability. You know, sometimes synthetic fabrics get such a bad rap, and I'm not a synthetic fabric aficionado by any means, but a little bit sometimes does just the trick. It makes it more durable, or it aids in wrinkle resistance or stain resistance or whatever. So I guess the point I'm trying to make in this design is there are so many small decisions that go into a fabric, a final fabric, and how it ends up. And I know, Bill and Courtney, for you, there are a million small decisions that go into designing a room as well. What is that balance that you strike in your interiors between old and new, and, you know, keeping the design fresh, but integrating, as you said, some of the classic elements or favorite possessions that clients might have? How do you mix the two, and how do you make that look very today?
Well, before I even answer that question, I wanted to say that I think that the story of Bukhara is so interesting because, like a lot of people, we are still kind of getting used to digitally printed fabrics, and it's kind of like the LED light bulb in a way. And as everybody knows, sometimes when you see digital fabrics, the printing can look muddy. Sometimes the ink sits on top of the fabric and it feels kind of sticky. But when it's successful, it's almost indistinguishable from a rotary print or a screen print or a block print. And I just think it's so interesting that Bukhara is really arguably more interesting than the original in so many ways. And this is a really pretty colorway on it too. Screen color. But in terms of how we kind of incorporate things, when we're thinking about using fabrics on antiques in particular, if there's a pattern that we're really head over heels over, like this really beautiful blue and white colorway of Summer Garden, and the this really yummy navy background of bird and butterfly. It just has such beautiful colors. It's wonderful to be able to use it en suite, meaning that it's on every piece of furniture, or perhaps it's on wall upholstery and curtains. And we're actually using that for a really pretty bedroom in a French Quarter house here in New Orleans. And on the one hand, it's a really strong statement because all of the furniture and the bed hangings and the curtains are the same fabric. But on the other hand, it's kind of subtle because there's not a lot of competition between color and pattern, and your eye goes to the architectural details and the carving on the French antiques. But for a different project here in New Orleans, we're working on a library that's quite contemporary in feel, and the walls will be a very deep color. It's very bold and graphic, and all of the furniture and the art and the fabrics, for the most part, are very contemporary in feel. But in that room, we're using a pair of club chairs that are traditional in style, and they are going to be upholstered in a printed chintz fabric in a really interesting colorway. And that fabric is so out of fashion and so surprising in that context that the chairs really end up being kind of the most modern thing in the room in some ways. It's what draws your eye to them. But I think that there are a lot of good fabrics in this collection that we could imagine using on all sorts of furniture, whether it's antique or new. And we like to incorporate fabrics that keep a room looking fresh, for instance.
And like this one again, I love, and I just could imagine it on a bergère, a painted bergère. It would be sensational. Or
look very Billy Baldwin.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I wanted to pick up a minute, Courtney, on what you said about digital printing. I think early digital printing was maybe a little sketchy. You're right, the ink seemed to sit on top of the fabric, but so many innovations have taken place. I can tell you the story through maybe looking at the next design, Cassandra. So this is the piece of Cassandra I found in the archive, and obviously it is without doubt your proverbial 1800s English floral. The original hand block version is in the archives of one of my very favorite English print works. The piece I found in the archives, though, was a 1980s rotary print adaptation, so we're one step removed from the hand block, not nearly as lovely or artisanal as the original. As with Buchera, I really wanted to return to the original design and the way it was printed. So I contacted my English buddies, and though we couldn't hand block the pattern, we worked really hard to produce a digital version as close to the hand block original as we could. The printer has done so much work in innovating the digital process that in our digital approximation of a hand block, you can see we even got the telltale mark of a hand block, which is the inks pressing through the fabric's reverse side. So this is one of my favorite colorways of Cassandra. Cassandra comes in 4 soft but really gutsy colorways printed on a fine linen. And the English have this wonderful habit of adding a spot of color in just the most remarkable place to set the design off and make it a little different, which is my job as well. There's so many patterns to choose from. I've kind of made a pact with myself not to do anything that didn't offer a little originality to it. I added this, this wonderful English tidbit by sneaking in just a little bit of gold in this otherwise green and blue coloration. And for me, it's all about finding the right balance of pattern to color, the right balance of scale, the right balance of woven to printed design. So I have been asked so many times, and maybe you're a better place to answer this question. I've been asked by so many designers that find floral patterns a little intimidating. What secret is there to integrating them successfully into a room, especially if they're a larger scale?
I have to say that we're really lucky because most of our clients love these fabrics as much as we do, and they can't get enough of them. So
I know. I think, but the placement of them can be very strategic. For example, again, in this New Orleans project, it's a very colorful, rich palette, and we thought the idea of a slip-covered chair in a big floral printed linen kind of adds an unexpected note. The rest of the furniture is...
But that also feels cozy and comfortable.
Right, and it allows you also to change the character of this one chair in the rooms where the other chairs are kind of important chairs, and we want the comfort and scale of the printed linen allows for something else to happen in the room. Other times, I think one of our first projects was the husband really wanted 7 windows in a big master bedroom at a horse farm, and the first thing he said to us at all was, "I want chintz curtains on the windows," and it was 7 big windows, but they just looked beautiful. And there we added some quilts and kind of homage to old Sister Parish kind of comfort, and I don't know, I think that it's just part of the palette. And I think the project that I was describing that this would have been perfect for, I think we would have had to convince the client that it's the right thing to do. And the New Orleans project that Courtney mentioned took some convincing too. And I think people they identify fabrics a certain way. And for us, we're looking at them as kind of artistic material that can be used, and once we explain why we want to do it a certain way, they're usually open to the conversation.
But, I was also just thinking about, we were recently scheming for a guest bedroom, and the owners wanted this room it's it's a kind of a double height space, so it's a dramatic space. And the owners wanted it to look dramatic. And one of the things that we did, we just had a fabric that we really loved, and we started with that. Really, that was the first thing that we talked about in the room, was using this particular fabric for the bed hangings. And it's because it's an object, really, it's almost like a piece of art that people love so much. And people grew up with these fabrics, they identify with them, and they want them in their houses.
Another good way to do it too, I was just thinking about what we recently schemed for a master bedroom, and there are some printed linens and floral patterns, but in the most part, they're either a pillow or a single empire chair. And what you can do is you can take the fabric out of the scheme and say, well, here's what it looks like without it. And that usually does the trick too, because it adds so much contrast to the other fabrics. Even if they're saying, well, I really want something cleaner than that, you take it out after they've seen it and they're like, okay, I get it.
Yeah. And that goes back to that great thing that you just said, Anne, about the English sneaking a kind of offbeat color into printed fabric. And rooms are very much like that too. They need to have some unusual elements that are surprising to keep them looking dynamic.
Well, thanks so much. We're nearing the end of our time. I know you feel as I do, that we're so passionate about what you do. We could spend the entire afternoon talking, but I think that'll probably boot us off shortly. So let's see if we can wrap it up. I just wanted to say one word. I can't leave without sort of giving a plug to the wovens in the collection. I can't do them justice here, there, but you felt them. They're absolutely finely woven and so soft. You simply have to go feel them and take a look at them. So I guess in closing, my vision for the collection was to reimagine the best loved Bassett McNab prints to create a really modern classic style. And maybe the only regret I have is that we couldn't include more designs in the first collection. I know collection 2 is nearly finished, so please stop into Travis and Company to see the entire collection, or contact your rep for a private showing. Courtney and Bill, is there a last tidbit of wisdom you'd like to add?
Well, I wanted to say thank you so much for telling us about your amazing process. It was so fascinating for us to learn about the fabric industry and these beautiful new fabrics.
I know, and the technique and kind of the colors, some of the slides that you showed us while we were kind of being introduced to the fabrics, it's so interesting to see the techniques and the artistry and the history that goes into these, and how they're a living, evolving aspect of design.
Well, thanks so much. It certainly has been my passion for a very long time. And thank you both. I've so enjoyed being a part of your discussion today. And I also wanted to thank Travis and Company for sponsoring this discussion. And thanks to all of our audience for joining us. Stay safe and go see the collection. It's really beautiful. Bye for now.